Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well and welcome to another video, and today it's finally time to close out 2025. Let's do my final 2025 wrap up and my wrap up for November and December. 2025 as a reading year has been a really great year for me. I did definitely read more books in 2024, but I feel like the quality of books that I read in 2025 was better because I have found 2 6-star reads in 2025 and an Infinity Star read, which is incredible, which is amazing, which I never would have expected. And I did have 1 6-star read in 2024, I believe, but I feel like finding 3 in a year is actually really exceptional. So I'm just super happy about all the reading that I've done in 2025 and finding those books, because right now they're like my favorite books of all time. So in this video, we're going to get into my 2025 reading stats. Did I read the 25 books that I set out to read in 2025? No, but we'll get into all of that as well. And then also we'll do a wrap up of November and December because I haven't done those yet. So without further ado, we have a lot of numbers to discuss today, so let's get into the video. Now, I primarily use Goodreads for my reading tracking just because that's where all my books are, where my physical TBR is on, and all my want to reads. But I do want to eventually get on Fable because I think they do provide you with a lot more stats, like different types of statistics showing you like the breakout of genres and stuff like that, whereas Goodreads doesn't do that. However, I just find it really daunting to have to transfer everything from Goodreads to Fable, and I know that you can import the data, but I've already done that once and then I kind of like fell off, and then there was like hundreds of books that I updated on Goodreads that I didn't update on Fable, and I would have to go back and do all of that. So that just seems like a very daunting task for me at the moment, and maybe eventually I will get on Fable, but right now I'm just using Goodreads. So Goodreads says that in 2025, for my year in books, I read 133 books, and that equates to 48,964 pages. My longest book was Alchemized at 1,030 pages, and my shortest book was My Boyfriends Are All Monsters, which was 52 pages. This was one of the novellas in the Scared Sexy collection. My average book length was 368 pages, which is pretty good, I would say. And my average rating for 2025 was 3.8 stars. So also pretty good. As I mentioned earlier, I had 2 6-star reads in 2025 and 1 Infinity Star read. And those top 3 books are Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. It's such an emotional kind of like slice of life realistic story, and I just absolutely loved it because I love Abby Jimenez's writing and like the way that she infuses emotion into her writing and into her stories and makes her characters go through like these real life situations that are very relatable. So this was definitely a top read of 2025. My next top read of 2025 was Left of Forever by Tara DeWitt, and this one is another romance. It's a second chance marriage and trouble kind of book, and this is another one that I absolutely loved. I loved her writing. I loved the beautiful quotes that she used in her writing, and I loved all of the emotion that she infused into her writing as well, same as Abby Jimenez. And this book was just like top notch, top romance for me thus far. So highly recommend you read this book. This is actually the second book in the Spoons Oregon series. So if you haven't read the first one, Savor It by Tara DeWitt. It's also really good. But this one definitely highly recommend. And then my top God tier book of 2025 was Alchemized by Senlin Yu. This is based on Hermione fanfic, but it kind of stands alone. It doesn't really have very much like Harry Potter fanfic in it or anything like that. It's kind of like a dystopian, has a lot of high stakes, a lot of war, stuff like that. It's very intricate. The magic system in this is incredible. The characters are incredible. All the suffering and pain that you will endure for this 1,000 pages will be well worth it by the time you get to the end. So if you haven't read this yet and you share similar reading taste to me, I would definitely recommend you pick this up. So those were my top 3 reads of 2025 with the highest ratings you could possibly think of, honestly. I don't really know how many Infinity Stars is, but 6 stars, Infinity Stars, these are all just arbitrary ratings that I decided to give these books, but you know what I mean when I say this was Infinity Stars. This was 6 stars. It was amazing. It was incredible, and highly recommend it. At the beginning of the year, I also made a 2025 TBR, which consisted of 25 books, and of those 25, I ended up reading 14 of them, which is a 56% completion rate, which honestly for 2025, my TBRs have been around 50% completion rate. So it's kind of like right on par with that. Now this TBR was a mix of new releases that came out last year and then books that I already had on my physical TBR. So the 14 books that I did read off of this list are Unromance by Erin Connor, Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, Scythe and Sparrow by Bryn Weaver, First Time Caller by B.K. Borison, Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, of course, Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage, Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, The Thrash Ashers by Julie Soto, A Curse Carved in Bone by Danielle L. Jensen, It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monahan, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston, Merry Christmas, You Filthy Animal by Megan Quinn, and Mile High by Liz Tom 40. So those were the 14 that I did complete off of this list, and the ones that I did not complete off of this list are Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, Love Arranged by Lauren Asher, Overruled by Lana Ferguson, Rose in Chains by Julie Soto, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie, Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh, Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So those unread books off of this list are going back on my unofficial 2026 TBR as well. So hopefully I'll be able to complete them this year. So those were all of my yearly stats. Now let's get into the November wrap up. So for the month of November, I ended up reading only 7 books, and one of them was a novella, and that equated to 2,292 pages. Now, of those 7 books, 4 were paranormal, 2 were dark romance, and 1 was a romance. So the first book I read in November was Good Spirits by B.K. Borison, and this is the first book. I don't know what this series is called. Is it Ghosted? No, I think it might be Ghosted, but there is a second book coming out to this in 2026, which is going to follow his coworker. So this is definitely an interconnected series, which I'm very happy about because I absolutely loved this book. This one follows the 2 main characters, Harriet and Nolan, and Nolan is the ghost of Christmas past. He's been dead for like hundreds of years, and his job is to basically haunt people as the ghost of Christmas past so that he can get them onto the ghost of Christmas, whatever, present, future, I don't know, so that they can basically change their lives because they're in need of it. And his next assignment is Harriet. Now, it doesn't really make a lot of sense why he needs to haunt Harriet because she is seemingly a very nice person. She's very kind. She's a little bit of a people pleaser, so she's not perfect. She does care about what other people think, but she mostly keeps to herself. She doesn't have a lot of friends. She works at this antique store that was passed on to her from her late aunt, I think it was, and she's just seemingly like a really nice girl. So it doesn't really make much sense as to why he needs to haunt her, and neither of them know why. Now, one day during their sessions, something goes awry and they end up in one of his past memories instead of hers, and they're starting to kind of like connect the pieces as to maybe she's there really for him and he's not really there for her. And this entire plot and story of this book was so good. There's so much emotion in it. It's so romantic. There's so much tension and yearning, and they're so sweet. I also listened to the audiobook of this, and the audiobook is so good. Nolan's accent is like amazing. So I would highly recommend you pick up the audio for this if you haven't read this yet, or if you're planning on reading it for 2026 Christmas. But the audiobook for this was so good. So I really enjoyed my time with this one. I sobbed at the end. The cat was amazing. I loved everything about it. I loved the characters. I was very invested in them, and I was very attached to the story, and I ended up rating this one 5 stars. The next book I read was Soul Searching by Lila Sage, and this is actually the first book in the Sweetwater Peak series. And this one I really enjoyed as well. This one follows Brady and Collins is basically moving back to her hometown under the pretense that she has time away from her job. She's a photographer and she wants to help with the family business, and Brady is the new in town furniture upholsterer or reupholsterer or something like that. And so he works with her parents in a way. I don't really remember the exact details of like how, but her parents also own an antique shop or something like that, and he works closely with them. So her twin sister ended up setting her up with a job with Brady, and she's basically living in this house with him. They're like in close proximity. Well, they're not like living in the same house together. It's like kind of like apartments in like this big house that's kind of like a haunted house, because one thing about Collins is that she can see ghosts. She's been able to see ghosts since she was a little kid. She's built relationships with them. It's like the same ones and also new ones that like come into her life. So it definitely has a very interesting plot, and this book has like a lot of like spooky scenes where she interacts with these ghosts, and they both kind of just like go into these spooky places, and it's really creepy and fun. I thought the romance in this was really good. It felt very slow burn, but like with a lot of tension and a lot of yearning. I liked both of the characters, and I had a really good time with this book. So so I ended up rating this one 4.25 stars. The next book that I read was Unhinged by Steph Maka, and this is the first book in the Dance with My Demons series. I really like the premise of this. It follows the main character Avery, and it's a why choose. So Avery basically commits a crime and she gets put into this mental institution instead of going to prison, and then everybody else that's also in this institution is there for the same reasons, because they all kind of like committed some sort of crime and it was due to like mental health reasons, and instead of being sent to prison they were all sent to that institution. There's multiple male characters in this one that she kind of has like a little bit of a relationship with, and they're all kind of like unhinged in their own ways. Some crazy things happen in this institution. People die. It's actually like a very scary place for her to be, so I was definitely intrigued by the plot line of this book. However, I wasn't really feeling a lot in terms of the emotions, and I don't really know if why choose is really for me. It's not like my favorite thing in the world, but I also don't despise it. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it. I'll read it if a book intrigues me like this one, but in this particular case I didn't really feel it, and I didn't really feel connected to anybody in this book either. But I did find the premise to be very interesting, and it does end on a cliffhanger, so I'm not really sure if I will continue the series. I am kind of curious to know what happens, but I don't like need to know, you know what I mean? And if the other books in the series are also like this short, then maybe I will continue the series. I don't know. But I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars and rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads because I had a pretty good time with this, but I just wasn't feeling like that many emotions, and I wasn't really feeling connected to the characters. But again, like I said, the premise of this is very, very good. Then the next book I read was Slipstream by Madge Merrill, and this is an F1 romance, and I picked this one up because it was F1 season at the time, and I thought, hey, why not pick up an F1 romance? So this one was okay. It follows the main character Lila, who is basically like her and her best friend turned boyfriend Max. They started a company together where they make movies, and they were contracted to do a movie on the upcoming Formula One race. And her assignment was to basically follow one of the drivers, Arthur Bianco, but he wasn't really into it. He was not very cooperative or anything like that, and he just didn't care because he, you know, is living his party life and having a good time. However, things go south for her when she finds out that Max, her boyfriend, is cheating on her with one of their like co-workers, and he wants to fire her from the company. And then to make matters worse, she finds out that when he filed all the paperwork to create the business together, he put it all in his own name, so she basically has nothing. So this girl was in a bad place. She goes to the bar to like kind of like reset herself emotionally, come up with a plan when she runs into Arthur, and they kind of like get to talking and decide to help each other. So it was interesting in terms of like the plot and everything like that, but it's another one that I wasn't feeling super connected to any of the characters or really didn't care all that much about what was happening. Like, it was pretty good, it was decent, it was a decent time, but it was also a little bit kind of like middle of the road and nothing to write home about in terms of like the story and stuff. I don't really remember how I felt about the writing. I think the writing was fine, like it didn't really pull me out of the story or anything like that, but it just wasn't really anything that like kind of stuck with me, and for entertainment purposes only, I would say this is pretty good. So I ended up rating this one 3.75 stars and rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads. Then the next book that I read was Autumn of the Grimoire by J.L. Vampa, and this is the first book in the Sister Solstice series, and it follows Agatha, who is Sister Autumn, and she's like a 300-year-old witch. Now there's 4 sisters, obviously autumn, spring, summer, and winter, and one of the rules is that they cannot ever be together. They can only see each other either on the equinox or on the solstice, and that is when they pass on the grimoire, which is like this magical book, to the next sister, and the grimoire then assigns them their orders of something that they need to complete until the next solstice or equinox. And these assignments, these orders, are basically something that like changes history. And for whatever reason, Agatha has always been like given the brutal assignments. She's known as like the brutal hand of Hespa, who is like the goddess, and she's always been given like the worst assignments. She's had to commit murders, she's had to set plagues, she's had to do some like really bad stuff that she really doesn't feel good about, but she understands the reason for it, so she does end up doing them. And in this book, she's the one who gets the grimoire next and is given orders, and her orders are to essentially seek out this prince, travel to this land, seek out this prince, and essentially get him to marry her, and she doesn't know why, and it doesn't really provide you with the reasoning. This was okay as well. Like, I really liked the beginning of it when she was living in her cottage in the forest, being a witch, living this like solitary life, and like no humans come. It was very, very atmospheric at the beginning, and that part I really, really enjoyed. But then once she starts traveling to like the kingdom where she needs to find this prince, things kind of changed and it became like this court setting, and then I had kind of like a hard time getting into it. So I didn't really enjoy the second half of this book book as much as I hoped I would. I think it must have been like my mood when I was reading this, because I was really looking forward to this book being like in its entirety, like how it was at the very beginning, with like the cozy vibes and the autumn feelings and all of that. And because it was like, you know, November, and that's just kind of like what I had wanted at the time. And that did happen, but only for a very short time, and then it kind of like fell off for me. I had a hard time kind of like getting into the plot in the second half of the book, and I had a hard time caring about the prince or any of the other side characters or anything like that, and there was just like a lot of court politics happening, and I just like couldn't get into it. So I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars and rounded down to 3 stars on Goodreads. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to continue this series. Maybe it gets better, but I will think about that in the future. That's a future me problem. Next, I read Love and Other Killers by Brynne Weaver, and this is the novella that's kind of a bridge between the Ruinous Love trilogy and the Seasons of Carnage new series that she came out with. So in this one, basically all of the characters come back, and they do like a family edition of the annual August showdown where they're going after Munster on the Texas farm, and it's kind of just like a competition between them. I really loved it. It was so fun. It was so fun to see like all of their dynamic again and like revisit with all of the characters. Barbara ends up making an appearance in this one, and so does Autumn, and I just had a really good time with it. It was really short, really fun, and it got me excited to start reading Taurus season, which I still haven't picked up yet, but I will be reading that very soon, and I'm just very excited to get back into this world. So I'm glad I ended up picking up this novella, and I ended up rating it 5 stars just because it was so nostalgic and I loved seeing all the characters again. It was short, it was sweet, and it was fun. And then the final book that I read in November was Mate by Ali Hazelwood, and this is the second book in the Bride interconnected series. And if you don't remember what the premise of like this whole world is that was introduced in Bride, basically in Bride it follows Misery, who is a vampire, and she's actually the collateral because there's like a dynamic and a peace treaty between humans, werewolves, and vampires, and every once in a while a new collateral person is basically given to the other group, and if something goes awry and if anybody decides to go to war with any of the other groups, they end up killing the collateral. So it's kind of like to ensure that the peace treaty stays intact and nobody starts a war with anybody else, because none of them really trust each other. Well, this book, Mate, follows Serena, who was Misery's friend. She was supposed to be just like a human orphan randomly chosen to be Misery's friend. However, in this book we find out that she's neither of those things. She wasn't random and she's not human. She's actually half were, half human. And the reason why that's important is because the vampires ended up having to keep her under surveillance, had to basically keep her secret, because if anybody found out that wares and humans were basically reproductively compatible, it would be basically the end of everything, because then the humans and the wares would like, you know, unite against the vampires and everything would basically blow up. So she has been kept hidden, she's been under surveillance, and then one day Cohen, who is the alpha of the Northwest Pack, tells her that she is his mate. She does kind of like end up rejecting the bond, like the mate, because she doesn't really know him and she doesn't really know anything about like their world or anything like that, and she's just learning it all for the first time. So it's very, very interesting. He does kind of like end up pretending he doesn't care, but you know, he does care. And I'm pretty sure Bride had this as well, but this book has like at the beginning of every chapter there's like a little note which is from his perspective, because the entire book is from her perspective. So there's like these little like snippets of his perspective at the beginning of every chapter, and that tells its own story, which is so good. I loved this book. I loved the tension between them. I loved everything related to their relationship, and I could possibly say that I like this one better than Bride, which should tell you something, because I absolutely loved Bride. This has definitely gone down as one of my favorite books of the year. It's one of my favorite paranormals. It's one of my favorite werewolf paranormals specifically, and I would highly recommend it if you do like werewolf books. So it's another one that's 5 stars. This whole series, like both of these books, Bride and Mate, were both 5 stars, which am I surprised? No. So 5 stars for Mate, and these are all the books that I read in November. So we had 7 total for November. Now let's get into my December wrap up. But for December, I did vlog all of these but one. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about the synopsis or anything like that. Plus they're all ones that I vlogged during my advent calendar series. So check out those videos if you want like detailed thoughts on any of these. But they are all holiday romances. We're in January. We're done with the holidays now. So nobody really wants holiday book recommendations unless you're going to save them for like the end of this year. So let's get into my December stats. In the month of December, I read a total of 14 books. One of them was a novella, and that equated to 5,101 pages. And of those 14 books, 11 were romance, 2 were dark romance, and 1 was a paranormal. The first book I read in December was Marry Me by C.R. Jane, and this one follows Natalie Molly and Easton, and it's a second chance. And basically they were high school sweethearts. They break up because he went off to Hollywood to be a Hollywood actor, I think, and she didn't want to like wait around for him. But now he's coming back into town to Tennessee, I think, because somebody's getting married, and he wants to basically win her back. This was really, really cute. It was really sweet. I have read a C.R. Jane book before, and I really liked the writing in that one as well. And this one was kind of the same. Like, I really liked the tension. He was really down bad for her, and there were just like so many sweet moments of him trying to like win her back, which I really, really loved. However, I will say that once we got to the halfway point in this book, things did start to drag a little bit because they were kind of like past that point. So then things did start to drag just a little bit for me, but I still really enjoyed it, and I loved the writing, and I loved how down bad he was for her, and I thought it was really, really sweet. So I ended up rating this one 4 stars. The next one I picked up was He Sees You When You're Sleeping by Alta Hensley, which is the first book in the Naughty or Nice series. This one was fun. It's a dark rom-com, kind of like a stalker rom-com. It was kind of funny to me because he's a firefighter, but he basically stalks her. She does social media, and she's got like this secret like personality online, and they kind of share the same interests. The writing in this was not that great. It was very staccato at first, a lot of like tell not show. There wasn't like that much emotion in it, but this was actually very entertaining. I don't know why, but I had a really good time with this one, and for strictly entertainment purposes, I thought this was actually kind of fun. It also kind of like explores a different kind of kink in the dark romance genre that I haven't read about before, which I thought was very interesting. And overall, I actually had a pretty good time with this one. I don't recommend this to be like, you know, one of like the best dark romances or anything like that, because it's definitely not. It's just strictly for entertainment purposes and just something to like pass the time that's kind of like fun and funny. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Then the next one I picked up was My Favorite Holiday by Lauren Blakely, and this is a single dad billionaire workplace fake dating romance, and it was really, really fun. I had a really good time with this one. Basically, it follows the main character Wilder, who owns the company. He's the billionaire, and Fable, who is his merch designer. She works at his company. She designs the merchandise for his company, I think it was, and he is hosting the company's annual like Evergreen Falls Best in Show Winter Games competition, and she was supposed to be participating with her at the time boyfriend, who ends up cheating on her, so now she doesn't have a boyfriend. And then Wilder's constantly getting set up with other people that he doesn't really want to date, so in order to get his aunt off of his back, they basically decide to help each other. They're gonna fake date to get him off his aunt's radar, and then he's gonna make the ex jealous and kind of like show him how to treat a woman. So that's basically like the basic setup of their arrangement. It's very cute, it's very fun. They also have to have like little affection practice scenes, which I thought was really cute, really fun, really great tension, and very good banter in this one. So I had a really good time with this one as well. I rated it 4.25 stars and rounded down to 4 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was Holiday Unscripted by Natasha Madison. For this one, I actually have a correction to my best and worst books of 2025 video, because at the time that I was filming that video, I hadn't read all of my December books, and this was the one that was lowest rated at the time. However, it does end up not being the lowest rated. So we will get to that book in a little bit, but just know that this is no longer the lowest rated one for December. This one follows Elizabeth and Nate, and Elizabeth lives in Australia, and her and Nate hooked up like 7 years ago or something like that when she was living in the US, and they ended up not speaking to each other for those 7 years, and it was all just like this one giant miscommunication. So now her brother is getting married, and she's coming home for the wedding. Now, I found this female main character to be insufferable. She was so annoying. She complained about everything. She was so petulant, so childish. I really, really did not like her. I also didn't really like the humor in this book because it was like this weird banter with the family and like basically with everybody, not just with the family, but like she basically did this to everybody where they kind of like make fun of each other by insulting each other, and I just didn't vibe with that type of humor. I felt like it was really mean for some reason, and I just wasn't into it. The writing was okay, it wasn't terrible, but this book was really like nothing to write home about. Nothing about it stood out to me. I didn't really care for the romance, and I didn't really care about these characters, especially Elizabeth, because I found her to be insufferable. So I ended up rating this one 2.75 stars, and I think I rounded up to 3 stars on Goodreads. But again, this is no longer the lowest rated book for December, even though this is the one that I mentioned for December as the worst rated. The next book that I read was Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh, and this is the first book in the Fitzpatrick Christmas series. This one was also okay. It follows Molly and Andrew. I thought it was really cute. They're both from Ireland, and every year they travel home together on the same flight because there's like not that many flights going from Chicago to Dublin, and so they always end up on the same flight, and they've been doing this for like 10 years. So they've kind of become friends throughout the process, and this year is their 10-year anniversary. However, they are hit with a terrible snowstorm and all the flights are canceled. There's no way to get home before Christmas, and it's this terrible, terrible ordeal because it means so much for Andrew to be home. Whereas Molly, she can kind of take it or leave it. Her family will understand. It's not that big of a deal if she misses one Christmas. However, it is a very big deal for Andrew. So what makes this book really cute is that Molly does everything that she can, everything that's in her power to get them there on time. She ends up calling in her friend to help her out, find a different route. They fly through like different cities. They have to take a ferry, they take a train. It's just like this whole journey to get him home for Christmas, and that's like the most important thing ever. I like the characters, I like their story, I like their romance, I liked how hard they tried to get him home and how much she cared about that. And I just thought it was a very cute, heartwarming Christmas story. So I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars and rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Leese, and this is a novella. This is like her holiday novella. It follows the two main characters, Jonathan and Gabriella, and they are both co-managers of a bookstore. Now, Gabriella is neurodivergent. I think she's autistic, and she has a hard time with managing certain aspects of this business. So the people who own the bookstore, this like really sweet, lovely couple, hired Jonathan to kind of help her out and deal with like the other aspects of the business that she's having a hard time with. And now this year, the bookstore is not doing super well, and there might have been like a competing bookstore that's opening up down the street or something like that. And essentially, she's worried that one of them is going to get fired. And in order to prove herself and in order to avoid getting fired, she comes up with this competition between her and Jonathan for like a sales competition, who can get the most sales in their respective genres. Okay, so they're competing with each other for that. This one was very, very cute. There's a lot of good humor. I did really like the tension between them and kind of like the rivalry between them. I did read a Chloe Leese book before, and I do remember her being like kind of funny in her writing and everything like that, which I really enjoyed. So I ended up rating this one 4 stars. Then the next book I read was In Holidays by Christina Lauren, and this is kind of like a magical realism book, which I did not expect going into this. It follows the main character May, and her family have been basically spending Christmas with their other like friends, like the other family friends or whatever, in Park City in this cabin every single year. And this year they end up finding out that the family friends are selling the cabin because they can no longer afford the upkeep on it, and it's gotten really expensive and stuff like that. So everybody's basically devastated. Now on their way home, she's kind of thinking about her life and how unhappy she is with her life, and she makes this wish to the universe to basically give her a sign and tell her what will make her happy. And then they end up getting in this car accident, okay? And when she wakes up from this car accident, she's basically reliving that vacation again. She's gone back in time, okay? And this happens a couple more times throughout the story. She's kind of like stuck in this time loop and she doesn't know why. I thought the concept of this was so interesting. There's also kind of like a little bit of a love triangle going on in this, which was interesting as well. Kind of like The Summer I Turned Pretty vibes, but it being like a Christmas romance, and then obviously the magical realism aspect of it. But this one wasn't my favorite because I felt like they didn't focus enough on the time loop and like figuring that out and like why she was stuck in this time loop. It was just like this unexplainable phenomenon that happened to her, and she just didn't seem super phased by it, you know, which I didn't love. And it just ended up focusing on the day-to-day stuff of like repeating the same days over and over again, and just like that was like the main aspect of it for like a good chunk of this book, and I personally didn't prefer that. I like the concept of it. I think it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. The writing was good though, and it did end well, so I ended up rating this one 3 stars. Then the next book I read was Merry Christmas, You Filthy Animal by Megan Quinn, and this is the second book in the Kringletown Christmas series, and I really had a great time with this one. The first one in the series was absolutely hilarious. I read it last year and I was super excited for this one, and it did not disappoint. It was absolutely hilarious as well. I had the best time. This one follows Max, who is Cole's friend from the first book, and him and his family basically own that whole like evergreen farm thing where Cole works as the reindeer handler for. They have like a Christmas tree farm section and like other holiday things, and his parents are basically retiring soon and he's just kind of like waiting to take over. And Betty is new in town and she's visiting her cousin, I think it was, or her uncle or something like that, and he brought her down there to start a rival Christmas tree farm business, okay? So Max finds out he thinks she's trying to put them out of business, and he basically needs to handle that. However, instead they start falling in love. It's absolutely hilarious. There's a moment where he like saves her life. It's the sweetest thing ever. Max is like so dramatic. He's such a funny character. Everything with him is always like so blown out of proportion. It's the most hilarious hilarious thing ever. And there are so many funny, like laugh out loud moments in this book. So I had the best time with this book. And I'm definitely continuing this series because it was announced that there is going to be a third book in the series coming out this year. So I'm very excited for that because these are just like so hilarious. Such a good time, and they will definitely get you into the holiday spirit when, you know, you're in that season. So I ended up rating this one 4.5 stars, and I think I rounded down to 4 stars on Goodreads. Then the next book I read was Holiday Ever After by Hannah Grace, and this one follows Clara, who works for her father's company, which is like a toy designer, Davenport Innovative Creations, something like that, I don't know. And she basically works in the PR department, and one day there's this video that goes out that goes viral and basically slanders their company completely, saying that they copied this doll design from this like local toy maker in a small town in Colorado, okay, and that they're like this terrible corporation putting people out of business, making a low quality replica, and they don't have the rights to it and stuff like that. So her job is essentially to go to that small town, befriend those people, and convince them to take down the video so that they can continue producing their toy at low cost and make a huge profit off of it. However, she ends up kind of like falling in love with the town and the townspeople and making friends with them, and Jack, who is the actual toy maker, he ends up basically being the love interest. So it's definitely a very interesting story. It definitely gave Hallmark like the same kind of like Hallmark vibes. I definitely felt like I was watching a Hallmark movie while I was reading this book. However, I didn't really feel much attachment to any of these characters, and I didn't love like the family drama and the family dynamics between Clara and her family and like her dad and basically everything that went down with their company. So I was kind of disappointed in that, and it didn't invoke like those happy feelings throughout the entire book because like all of that was kind of like weighing on me and taking away from my enjoyment in reading this book. And I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars, and I think I rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads. The next one I read was Merry Little Christmas by Lauren Blakely, and this is interconnected with my favorite holiday, and this one follows another hockey player, Rowan. And Rowan is also obviously very rich, but he's had bad luck with dating. I think his wife left him, or the mother of his child, he's a single dad, she ended up leaving him, and he's not had very good luck with dating. And his best friend's sister, Isla, is a matchmaker. So one day at like a hockey Christmas party or something like that, his friends bid on one of her packages as a matchmaker to get him kind of like set up with somebody so that he can be happy. However, he ends up having a crush on Isla, and that kind of turns into a fake dating situation. I listened to the audiobook for this one, and the audiobook for this was very, very good. It's like a full cast audiobook. There were 4 people, I think, doing all the characters, and it was just really well done. So I ended up having a really good time with this one. The writing is very good, same as like in Lauren Blakely's previous book. It's very easy to get lost in this, and it's just like a fun fake dating single dad rom-com. So I ended up rating this one 3.75 stars and rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was The Mating Game by Lana Ferguson, and this one I really, really enjoyed. This is another Omegaverse rom-com, and it follows the main character Tess, who is kind of like a renovator. Her and her brothers have a business where they're like renovating homes and cabins and stuff like that, and she's trying to be on HGTV. She's trying to get her own show on HGTV to help her pay for some medical bills for her father. Now, she thought her entire life that she was a beta, and basically if you're not a werewolf, you're a beta. So she did not know that she was a shifter, that she could shift or anything like that, and she finds out while she's like traveling for work to redo these cabins that she is in fact a shifter, and she is in fact an Omega, and she's basically just learning what that means. So she goes to the job site, which is the cabin that she's supposed to be renovating, and Hunter is one of the owners of the cabin. His aunt wants the renovations done. He doesn't really want to change things very much, but he's still overseeing her, and they end up getting snowed in together. It's a very forced proximity situation. She ends up learning he's an alpha, and obviously she's an Omega, so things escalate quickly. It's very good. I had a great time with it. I love Lana Ferguson's writing and her storytelling. She does like really good, fun rom-coms, very spicy, and just an overall really fun time. So I would highly recommend this one as well. It definitely gave similar vibes to Mate, but I still think I maybe preferred Mate a little bit better, and I ended up rating this one 4 stars. Then the next one I read was He Knows When You're Awake by Alta Hensley, and this is the second book in the Naughty or Nice series after He Sees You When You're Sleeping, and this one unfortunately didn't hit for me. I definitely liked the first one in the series better. I thought it was cuter. I thought it was more interesting, whereas this one was just kind of like meh, and there were a lot of moments in this that actually cringed me out. It follows the main characters Cole and Sloan is the friend from the first book. She's a jewelry designer, and she basically quits her job, and Cole, who has been stalking her for a while, he's a billionaire, he basically offers her this assignment where she needs to come up with this whole new jewelry line by Christmas Eve because he can basically get it sold to Bergdorf's or something like that. Okay, so she takes a job because she doesn't have a job, and he basically has her live in his penthouse. I think they're in New York, if I remember correctly. I've honestly like forgotten a lot of the things that happened in this book, but that just tells you that nothing really stood out to me, and a lot of the scenes in this one were kind of cringy to me, so I didn't really enjoy my time with this one, and I ended up rating it 2 stars. Then the next book that I finished was A Heart for Christmas by Sophie Jo Main, and this is an Advent romance. This is kind of like a young adult Advent romance, where if you watched my Advent calendar vlogs, you basically open up 1 chapter per day to read during the month of December. From December 1st to December 24th, there's 24 chapters. You basically open up 1 chapter per day and you continue reading the book throughout the entire month. And this one I didn't really love because the main character, April, ends up having a heart transplant, and she goes to visit her dad for Christmas. I think they go to the Alps, or like he lives in the Alps or something like that. And she is still recovering, and she's still like very sensitive to things. She's very restricted. And the reason why I really didn't like this book is because all of the other characters thought they knew better than her doctors and just constantly kept telling her to do things, like do all these physical things, like go skiing and cross-country skiing and hiking and like all this stuff which she's not supposed to be doing. And she is having a hard time with saying no to them, and I just like didn't like this entire thing. Everything about this rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like any of the characters, and I just like really didn't enjoy my time reading this book. I did like the concept of it being an Advent romance and just like reading 1 chapter a day. I thought that was really fun, like opening up each chapter because they were sealed. So like the process of reading this was pretty fun, but I did not like the story. So I ended up rating this one 2 stars as well. So these 2 are tied for my lowest rated books for December instead of Holiday Unscripted by Natasha Madison. So this is the correction for that video that I posted, Best and Worst of 2025. Okay, and then the last book that I read in December, which I did not vlog in my Advent calendar vlogs because I read it after the 24th, was Snowed In by Catherine Walsh, and this is the 2nd book in the Fitzpatrick Christmas, and this one follows Megan and Christian, and she lives in Dublin. They know each other when they were young, I think, like when they were in high school or maybe college or something like that, and he sees her basically running out on her wedding, and he kind of like directs her where to go, and then they don't see each other for a while, and she leaves town. Now she's coming back to town for Christmas, and they run into each other again at a bar, and they kind of have a little bit of a heart-to-heart because neither of them really want to go home for Christmas. She's feeling weird because her ex-fiance is there and like, you know, in town, and there's like a lot of stigma around her for having like run out on her wedding, and he's like the last single one in his family, so he gets like a hard time from his family members that he's like the last one that's not in a relationship. So they kind of come up with this fake dating situation where they're going to help each other, be each other's support system, and basically go to each other's homes for Christmas to pretend that they're boyfriend and girlfriend, and then everybody will kind of like get off their backs. So this one was cute. I think I may have liked the first one maybe a little bit better, or they were kind of like on the same level. The writing was good, the humor was good, the tension was good, and I liked the characters, but I didn't really feel all that interested in the plot for this one. It was cute, fake dating, kind of like home for Christmas kind of thing, but it was nothing to write home about and nothing that really dazzled me, you know? So I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars and rounded up to 4 stars on Goodreads. So these are all the books that I read during the months of November and December, and that was my 2025 reading wrap up. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed. If you made it to this part in the video, please leave me a puppy emoji because some of my favorite reads for these 2 months were the werewolf romances, the Omegaverse, The Mating Game by Lana Ferguson, and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, because I absolutely loved those books and I had such a great time reading both of them. But overall, I still had a really good time with a lot of these holiday romances, and I'm very happy to have checked off a lot of them off of my list and off of my physical TBR. So if you've read any of these, let me know down below and what your thoughts were. Leave me a puppy emoji if you've made it to this part in the video. And again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.